Hello! Hey, it's the Genesee County Compassion Club show. I'm Jeremy, your host. Glad to be back in the studio here at allpointstv.com. It's a beautiful day. How's everyone today? Man, back in the studio. It's Wednesday. It's finally gorgeous out. I'm loving it, man. We had our first day of spring last week. Wasn't able to make it in. I apologize. But back here in the studios making it happen. And I'm almost disappointed because it's so nice out, right? It's beautiful. How you doing, John?
I'm glad that we did not get the winter that I thought we could have had.
Yeah.
Because the 12th of December, because I took pictures of it. 11th or 12th of December, we had all that snow, and I was like, we've got to dig in and dig out.
Right.
And now it's like, it's over. Well, I hope it is.
Well, I know that the groundhog saw his shadow. He took off back there in February, but I think it's 6 weeks have come and gone, right?
Oh, yeah. This was February, the first week of February.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Cool. Well, hey, we're back here in the studios at allpointstv.com. As you hear, I've got John behind the camera making it happen. Appreciate him working his tail off here at the studio. And going to make this happen today. We got lots of news for you to share. We're going to be talking about medical marijuana. Going to let you know what's happening down at the Genesee County Compassion Club and keep you up to date with everything. So without further ado, let's get started. First and foremost on the list, I want to make sure everybody is aware that April 20th is a special day. It's 420, you know what I'm saying? So we got right here our 420, our 8th annual 420 celebration at the G3C. It's going to be off the hook. It's going to be a fantastic party. These are the posters right here. We're calling it the Elevation, talking about taking it to another level, talking about taking it to the next level. And that's what this is all about. Let's get together, let's celebrate, and let's educate. So we're going to have lots of fun. Mark your calendars. I believe it is a Thursday, so it should be a nice, easy, open day for everybody to get down there. We're going to be doing all the great stuff that we've done in the past and even a few more things. So check out these awesome posters. Got these going on. I can think of a few people that might be a picture of there.
I was going to say that. I was going to try to build you up, say that was you actually hanging from there on your vacation.
It's not. I ain't got those kind of guns. I'm sorry. It might be Bill. It might be. All right, but as you can see, we've got the annual twist off. We're going to have that going on. We're going to have the best. We're going to have the fastest. We're going to have the testing cup. I know that the information for the testing cup was posted on Facebook. You can check that out for yourself. Entries have to be in, I want to say by April 14th, if I saw that. I might be wrong on that date, but I know they got to be in before the actual 420 date. So if you want to get your buds in or your concentrates in for the cup, you need to get it in now. All right, it's entry time now, and like I said, details are posted on Facebook so you can see what the costs are and what the different categories are. I think we're going to be having like best overall, highest CBD, highest THC in both flower and in concentrates. So all you big caregivers out there, you want to show off your stuff, get ranked, get a cup, get recognized, get your entries in. Okay. Next thing we're going to have that's going to be going on, it's going to be called Name That Strain Contest. That's going to be something fun and new. We're going to see if these guys can put their sniffers to the test, tell us what's in the jar. You can join in on that. It's going to be lots of fun. We're going to have the photo booth back, and everybody enjoys doing that. Going to have a new one coming out this year, new contest, a pie eating contest. But you can throw down on that, huh, John? Sound good? Pie eating contest? What's your favorite kind of pie, John?
Actually, apple.
Apple pie.
Yeah, very boring, but...
And this guy, he's all American, ain't he? All right, apple pie. I don't know if I've ever met a pie I don't like. But yeah, we're going to have pie eating contest. We're going to have a caricature artist, caricature. She's been there a couple of years. Everybody loves her, and I can't remember the name of her for the life of me. I do apologize. But she does a fantastic job, and I'm excited to see her coming back. She'll be doing your drawings, so you can get that done. We're also going to have how many G's in the jar, so you get to have a little guessing game. So we've got all kinds of good fun games. We've got door prizes. We're going to have the glass blower there, Mr. Iran Park, and the glass park. He was there last year. He's been coming up and doing classes for us, and he's going to be back here with us at the 420 party. Like I said, we're going to have door prizes. We're going to have our auction, and of course, we'll also have B-Dogs. From B-Dog's Hot Dogs. He will be back, and word on the street is Mr. B-Dog will be debuting a brand new hot dog at the 420 party. So we'll be the first ones to try it out. He knows we got the best palates in the land. We've been working on them, you know what I'm saying? And we'll put his hot dog to the test. So come on out to our 420 party. It's going to be fantastic. Hopefully it'll be a good weather. But even if it's not, we're going to have a blast. We're going to have a good time. It is our 8th annual 420 party, and I hope to see you guys there. All right. Next event's coming up. I want to make mention we've got our Adopt a Highway coming up. It's going to be actually the Saturday, I believe, after the 420 party, so it's coming up here shortly. We'll be cleaning up M13. That's our adopted section out there right on the line of Shiawassee and Genesee County. We clean both sides because that's how good we are. But at any rate, we need your help. We'll be doing that, like I said, the Saturday after the 420 party. We'll have sign-up sheets posted. We're going to do a safety video. And when you come back from cleaning, we'll feed you as well. Show you that we appreciate your hard work and your volunteerism. So if you could join us, if you could mark your calendars, definitely appreciate it. Also coming up again, we have our soup kitchen. We just had this last Friday. I know Matt did a killer job, served up some coney dogs down there. Thank you very much, Mr. Matt. You do a fantastic job at the soup kitchen, and I know everybody down there really appreciates it. So awesome times. Mark your calendars, the last Friday in April for the soup kitchen. So good events coming up, lots of exciting stuff. If you've noticed the backdrop here, it's like, it's kind of a theme. And the theme is we are moving. You know what I'm saying? We are moving. So I know you guys have been hearing about that down at the club. It is happening. And we're going to get you more details on that when we can. We don't want to let the cat out of the bag before we're ready. But, let's get ready to get it on. You know what I'm saying? All right. I've got some news I want to share with you. One big topic that's been getting talked a lot about here, not just in Michigan, not just here on the podcast, but in general. Our president just addressed this issue. Our governor just recently addressed this issue. In fact, just recently passed some resolutions regarding this subject. And what I'm talking about is opioid addiction. This is something that's rampant. And it has been brought on by the proliferation of pharmaceutical opioids being overprescribed, being abused. And the abuse is, from everybody from the pharmaceutical sales rep down to the patient. And it's across the board. It's an addictive substance, and it is devastating for lives that are involved with this and the people that are affected around it as well. What we're seeing is like I said, the prescription, the pharmaceutical abuse going on, and then leading folks into a more devastating opioid addiction path, oftentimes relating in straight up street drug use like heroin and other things being abused. But this is an epidemic going on in this country, and it is something that needs to be addressed. I don't know that there's necessarily more heroin in the United States today than there was back in the 1980s. Maybe there is, maybe there isn't. But the problem is that we've got a lot more folks that you normally would not think of as being your typical heroin junkie. These folks are your aunts, your uncles, your grandpas, people that have been in car accidents, hardworking folks, family folks, folks that are, important parts of our communities getting addicted to these hard drugs, and it is due to the methods that they're getting, at their doctor's office. So, and I don't want to necessarily put the blame on the doctors. This is a big problem, and like I said before, the blame goes from the top to the bottom. But the fact of the matter is that we do have an opioid addiction going on in this country, and I think it's interesting to see how our government is going about addressing these issues. I was positively pleased to see what our governor had to say about opioid addiction. And I read some of his comments that were posted in the news. And, the important thing that I noted was that he said we need to take this head on, and we need to take a look at it as a civil issue, as a health issue, and not as a criminal issue. And so that shows me, that rhetoric from our governor does show me that our government is moving in the right direction in dealing with drug addiction. But we still have a long ways to go. So at least we're making some of the right steps, but I think we need to watch this closely and carefully. The reason I say that is because some of the resolutions that were passed along with that governor's speech, I don't necessarily agree with. Some of these things seem to be more about spending money and more about bigger government than they are about actually dealing with the problem. So as we see this often happen with our legislative bodies and with the bureaucracy that goes on in this country, we go to talk about a problem, we go to address it, and oftentimes miss the punch when it comes to delivering the solution because somebody got their greedy mitts in there and now they're really worried about getting paid instead of actually trying to fix something. And I see some of that going on right now with the way that our state is taking a look at opioid addiction. What I would like to do is see more input from actual patients, from actual treatment centers, as to what do these folks really need to help them with their issues. And the reason I'm bringing this up and talking about it on our medical marijuana show is because I do think that marijuana can play an important part in treating people with opioid addiction. I've seen this firsthand with a number of my patients that were on opiates prescribed to them by their doctor. You know, they were using them according to the prescription, but yet they were still in a sense addicted to it, very much so, physically and mentally, and oftentimes they had a reduced quality of life because of the effects from the opiates. So like I said, I've had firsthand experience seeing this from our patients, from my patients, and I have seen the benefits that cannabis has provided to them, and able to, in some cases, actually completely get off from the opiates, and in other cases, at least reduce the amount of opiates that they are using. So I have seen marijuana be effective for this, and I think that more and more people are starting to wake up to this fact. There's an interesting article, it's just posted in Rolling Stone, dealing with this. It's talking about overdoses from opiates. And this is kind of interesting. This is from New Mexico, Santa Fe, New Mexico, Rio Arriba County, which is just north of Santa Fe. It says it has some of the highest rates of drug overdose in the United States. Between 2010 and 2014, at least 78 people died from overdoses for every 100,000 people, with 24 in state and 14 across the nation. So, not high numbers, but enough to take notice of. It says here, heroin and other opioids, effective painkillers like oxycodone, hydrocodone, fentanyl. These have been going across the communities like street drugs. And, what we have to have is some harm reduction efforts, and that's what this is calling for. So things like syringe exchange services. These have been used in other countries and in other large metropolitan areas. So they help cut down on the spread of drug-related diseases. I think these are effective. Injections or distributions of naloxone or John, you might have to help me out with this one here. Naloxone. Anyways, this is the new drug that's used to help people that are overdosing on heroin. We've just recently seen in our state, Michigan State Police troopers now being equipped with doses of this naloxone drug in case of a heroin overdose. They are also now trying to equip schools and other emergency personnel with these types of drugs to be used in case of overdose. Again, looking back at the numbers here, in this area that has the highest amount of deaths, across the country, 78 people out of 100,000 over a period of 14 years. So again, not a high number, but definitely needs to be looked at. However, is this the type of fix that we need? Do we need to be selling more drugs to these police officers, EMTs, schools, and so on to prevent the use of other drugs? Is that really an effective thing? So these are the things that I like to question. I think that we all need to question as a society as to, what are the best ways to deal with this. Getting back to medical marijuana, it's kind of interesting looking at this. Some of the numbers here. It says that medical marijuana obviously is legal in New Mexico, and along with a whole lot of others. It says here that the state has 35 dispensaries for 33,000 patients since the program became available in 2007. So they do have the availability to that, and it says here that the governor, Susana Martinez, has until April 7th to decide whether her state becomes the first ever to legalize the use of medical marijuana to treat opioid addiction. So that's why I'm talking about this. Here's a new measure being introduced, being considered by New Mexico, and they're not looking at the debilitating conditions. They already have those, like Michigan has them as well. Your typical AIDS, HIV, PTSD, cancer, that type of thing. They have the same type of conditions list that we do. They're considering adding a condition to that list, and the condition is opioid addiction. I think that's incredibly progressive. just to even have this being presented to the governor for consideration. And I think that they are on the right track. I think that's an excellent measure, and it is a true and tried way to actually get people off from these opioids and into an alternative that is not going to be long-term damaging, and it is not going to be abused in the sense that the opioids are. So, like I said, our governor just addressed this. He had his method of doing things. I mentioned a few of those things that he's looking at doing. They're increasing law enforcement to deal with it. They're talking about, passing out the anti-drug, the naloxone for the overdose situations. They are talking about giving more money to treatment programs. So these are good things that our state's looking at doing. But here's New Mexico going the extra mile and saying, hey, we're doing all of those things as well, but let's also look at this here, because this is actually working and it's actually helping people get off from this harmful drug treatment path that they're on right now. We've seen that here in Michigan. I know a number of our patients, like I said, firsthand, my patients. I'm sure some of your patients, some of you personally have felt the benefit of this and the positivity that comes from the switch. And I think this is something hopefully that we could push to our government here in Michigan and say, hey, look, what about adding this as a condition? If you haven't forgotten, we still have the ability to petition our state government to add conditions. Most people, I think, are in the mindset that, okay, we want to look at adding things like autism, which was previously just left on the desk and never decided. Or they're looking at other physical ailments out there, debilitating conditions that they'd like to add to the list. Here's one that's a little bit outside of the box, but I think should definitely be considered, and that's opioid addiction. So kudos to New Mexico for thinking about that. Hopefully they'll do that. Like I said, April 7th is when the governor has up until that point to sign it. So I'll keep you informed. But kudos to New Mexico. I think that's just fantastic. All right, I'm going to move on to another state here, another story. Let's see here. Massachusetts. Massachusetts has medical marijuana. Massachusetts has decrim. Massachusetts has recreational marijuana. And now Massachusetts looks like they may be the first one to start a statewide medical marijuana delivery system. So pretty interesting there. Pretty big deal. Obviously, I don't think Massachusetts is quite as big of a state geographically as Michigan, so it might be a little bit more feasible. Obviously, you're talking about a state, at least authorized or state-ran type of program. So it'd be interesting to see how the production part of that goes. But at any rate, I think that's pretty cool. A statewide delivery. That's pretty cool. All right, moving on here. Vermont, right next to Massachusetts. Is that right? Yes, Vermont. Their House just recently delayed a decision on medical marijuana. Actually, I take that back. On recreational marijuana. Man, get these things confused. Vermont already has medical marijuana. They are currently considering adding on and expanding to have recreational marijuana be available for adult use. This is something that their state government is taking up. It is not a ballot initiative. It's not something their voters or the people are voting on. It's something that the state government's taking care of. But right now they're delaying their decision. They're looking at getting more information. They're getting some feedback. And it is the House part of their government in Vermont that has caused this delay. But at any rate, at least their government is stepping up and taking a look at it. I think that's important, and not waiting for their voters to push them into that position. All right, next state, moving on here. Florida. For those of you that don't know, Florida does have medical MJ. It was expanded, but it is still a very limited program. You have to be state approved. Basically, it's going to be CBD type only. However, Florida is looking at expanding their medical marijuana, and their House just recently gave the okay for the expanded program. So we may be seeing something this year come out of Florida for expanded medical marijuana use. And obviously, Florida's a big state. A lot of people in that state, a lot of people that will qualify for medical marijuana if they open up the guidelines and allow people to actually apply for this product. So we'll see what happens with Florida. Kind of interesting there. All right, next state. Going to go back up north to Maine. This was kind of an interesting story. It was actually kind of sad. And I thought, that Maine was a little bit more open-minded But apparently maybe not. Or maybe it just doesn't have to do with Maine. Maybe it has to do with the donor system. Anyways, there's a story up in Maine. Basically, a gentleman, he is born with a debilitating disease that basically shuts down his kidneys. And he is on the kidney donor wait list. So this gentleman is waiting for donors. He's waiting for a kidney. He's got to have it. It's not like his kidneys are going to get better. He's on dialysis, so on and so forth. But at any rate, when the people that run the list found out that this patient was on medical marijuana, they took him off the transplant list. So what's up with that? Maine has recreational marijuana. It's had medical marijuana for quite some time. And why would that even make a difference? It's not like he's on the... That's just preposterous. I mean, obviously his doctors are aware of the situation. They recommended that he use this. And if somebody needs something that vital, why would you take away the opportunity for them to have that? I mean, for any reason, let alone something as minuscule as this. So, there's foolishness everywhere. And even in a place like Maine where you've got recreational just passed last year by the voters, you've had medical marijuana for quite some time. Even there, you're not completely off the hook. So the fight, we got to keep it alive, no doubt about it. All right, next state, West Virginia. West Virginia Senate committee just passed medical marijuana. So maybe we'll see something in West Virginia also. Kind of similar situation to Florida and some of these other states that have their legislatures working on items. West Virginia is in the mix as well. So we'll keep an eye on them, and maybe something later this summer we'll have a little bit more solid. But at least things are moving forward. I know West Virginia is very conservative. Some might even call it backwoods. But at any rate, they're moving forward. They're at least looking at the right things. All right, moving on here, I want to talk about Michigan. All right, Michigan's got all kinds of crazy stuff going on. You guys know that we have the new laws that were passed back in the end of last year. And there's been a lot of stir about recreational marijuana in Michigan. We haven't seen anything on the official ballot yet, but there have been many groups that have attempted and continue to try to get this important issue on the ballot. And of course, we're talking about recreational marijuana right now. One of those groups is MI Legalize. I've covered them extensively on the program here. They are still actively working to create draft language for a bill that we could potentially vote on. They would need to gather signatures, so I'd imagine an upcoming signature drive will be happening. I know they're looking for support financially and also physically to help get out the word that they're going to be trying to do this. I believe the action plan is for something in 2018. So they would try to get a recreational marijuana vote on the ballot available for voters to choose sometime in 2018, I believe, is their goal. The reason I'm talking about it again today is because the group that helped pass Michigan's medical marijuana program here in 2008, Marijuana Policy Project, has since approached MI Legalize and a few of the other groups in Michigan about getting that recreational ballot going. Seems like they are trying to work with these groups. They want to support them in any way possible, probably similar to how it was done back in 2008 when they worked with NORML. But anyway, MPP is back in and interested in Michigan, which is a good thing. MPP doesn't have quite the power that it used to, but it is still a very powerful lobbyist group that does have some decent financial backing and that can certainly make a difference. So I think it's a very positive thing that MPP has recognized Michigan as being a leader state in the marijuana industry, and I think it's a good thing that they're trying to work with our locals here in Michigan, our grassroots groups, to develop something that everybody can be happy with in the end. So it's going to be important. I think a lot of folks feel in Michigan that they want to have the recreational market open up. They want to see marijuana legalized for adult use. But there's a lot of argument as to how is that going to happen. Should there just be one giant Budweiser marijuana company that does everything for everyone and so we can all feel safe and only one guy gets paid? Or should there be a bunch of small business owners out there making this happen and controlling the industry? typical small town versus big corporate guy type of argument. I mean, I think the important thing it is that we're recognizing is that marijuana should not be illegal for adult recreational use. Putting people in jail for that is ridiculous and a waste of our public funds. Those are the important things I think that we can all agree on. And so I think it's good that we've at least got that far, and we've got the majority of the mainstream society at least sort of coming along, jumping on the bandwagon and agreeing. I think the recent MERS poll from Michigan showed overwhelming majority support for a legalized recreational market. So I think it's likely that we will see something happen in 2018. What that will be remains to be seen. I think it's good that MPP is stepping up, like I said, working with the local grassroots groups. If you want to get involved, I know it's very easy to contact the folks at MI Legalize or folks at MPP, Marijuana Policy Project. If you want to get on the bandwagon, do it. Get a hold of them, jump in, and they'll be happy to utilize you. You'd be surprised just how active you can be. All right, a couple other things about Michigan. There's an article here is from U.S. News and World Reports. So this is big news. I mean, that's a international really, publication. They're talking about the small little town of Niles, Michigan. When I think of Niles, Michigan, I always think of grapes and truckers, because that's basically what I'm driving past when I'm on the way to Chicago. Niles is a small town right in the southwest corner of the state, and they recently voted on Monday in favor of a resolution stating the intention to adopt 3 medical marijuana laws passed by the state legislators last year. So this is more of a symbolic thing that the council is doing, but basically they are saying they will support the laws that were now passed into law at our state level. They will move forward with seeing how they can regulate medical marijuana businesses in their town. And it looks like they are positive towards the medical marijuana business in their community. It says about 200 people showed up to their public meeting. It says all those who voted in the informal poll, over 80% supported permitting dispensaries. So all in all, they've got a pretty large public support, pretty large public showing. I mean, 200 people at your local town meeting is a big number. If you've ever been to a city council meeting for, say Flint, unless it's a special event or a special issue, you'd be lucky to have 200 people there. And Niles is a pretty small town. So obviously pretty hot issue, a lot of people concerned, but overwhelming support, 80%. It's pretty strong. All right, let's see what else we got here. It's Michigan. Excuse me. Okay, this is the last article I wanted to cover here about Michigan. I thought this was kind of interesting. It was in the Detroit Free Press. Pretty good article here by Kathleen Gray and Paul Egan, like I said, at the Detroit Free Press. I want to go through this with you because I think it's fascinating. As the new laws are being shaped and formed, we are all sitting on the sidewalk, so to speak, waiting to see what are these going to do? How do you play? Can we play? How is it going to affect us? What do we do? Everybody's got lots of questions. This is not going to clear all those up for you. I'm just letting you know that right now. But I think it gives you a good picture of where things are at. So let me get into the meat and bones of this article. All right. I'm going to cut through some of it though, and just kind of get to the scramble. It says here, the jockeying taking place under Michigan's weakest in the nation laws outlining government ethics, transparency, and conflicts of interest. I think that's kind of an interesting way to start the article. But it says, it's all happening while Lansing awaits Governor Rick Snyder's appointment of a 5-member board that will ultimately oversee licensing of the medical marijuana industry, raising questions about who will truly benefit from bringing pot to the mainstream. It says here, the stakes are high. Medical marijuana revenues in Michigan are estimated at more than $700 million. If full legalization of marijuana happens, as it has in 8 other states, the revenues could be enormous. ArcView Market Research, a California-based company that tracks the marijuana industry, reported $6.8 billion nationally in legal marijuana sales, both recreational and medicinal. In 2016, in 2016, and projects the market to grow to $21.6 billion by 2021. I'd like to point out to you before we go any further in the article, ArcView Market Research, I believe, also was one of the companies that was bidding to provide the tracking system software for the medical marijuana industry here in Michigan. So I'll just share that with you and leave it at that. All right, it says, amid those types of numbers, so obviously there's some big money expected to be coming from the medical marijuana market here in Michigan and across the nation. Big money. It says, amid those types of numbers, the lobbying efforts in Lansing have exploded. All right, so here's the meat and bones. Check this out. The Free Press investigation found the chief of staff of the House and Senate committees developing the medical marijuana legislation both quit their jobs in the past 2 years to become lobbyists for the medical marijuana industry. The chief of staff of both the House and Senate committees, the committees that were developing the medical marijuana legislation, they quit their jobs, now they go work for medical marijuana lobbyists. All right, next point. Former House Speaker Rick Johnson, a lobbyist since 2005, worked on medical marijuana legislation, though he said he had no paying client, and now has been nominated to be on the 5-member board that will issue the medical marijuana potentially lucrative business licenses. Johnson is also negotiating the sale of his stake in the lobbying firm Dodak Johnson and Associates to a lobbyist for the medical marijuana industry, raising concerns about whether the industry lobbyist could seek to curry favor with Johnson through the price paid. So, are you catching what I'm getting at here? It's kind of interesting. Since 2015, medical marijuana interests have spent more than $336,000 lobbying state lawmakers and officials and have paid more than $50,000 into campaign funds state lawmakers control, but can't be calculated from public records because state law does not require multi-client lobbying firms, including some whose clients list include medical marijuana players, according to a review by the Free Press, to identify how much of their total lobbying effort is spent on specific issues, such as medical marijuana. While campaign fund donations must be publicly reported, lawmakers don't have to disclose donations businesses make to federal nonprofit funds they control, known as social welfare programs. So this is just a way for people to get around the laws and still donate money to what they want to have happen. All right. According to a filing with the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, former House Rep. Eileen Kowal from White Lake Township received $15,000 worth of shares in a medical marijuana company in 2015 to pay for consulting work, while her husband, Senate Majority Floor Leader Mike Kowal, also from White Lake Township, helped push medical marijuana bills through the legislature. Elaine Kowal confirmed to the Free Press she signed the agreement and received the shares, but she said she quickly recognized the conflict of interest, rescinded the agreement, and returned the shares. The developments have been largely shielded from public view. Michigan has no financial disclosure requirements for public officials, minimal restrictions on lawmakers or legislative staffers working in the Capitol one day and hanging shingles as lobbyists the next.
They have no finance, or they have no requirements or no reporting apparatus in place.
No, Michigan does not.
Holy crap! I mean, that's no wonder they.
Yeah, that's why I'll go back to the beginning of the article here, and it states very clearly, Michigan is weakest in the nation, outlining government ethics, transparency, and conflicts of interest.
Those are foreign
concepts. That's our
concepts.
laws. That's not an opinion. That's our laws.
Those are foreign concepts to our legislature, I guess. That's just shocking that none. Yet they'll come after us for any kind of what perceived violation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So at any rate, the Center for Public Integrity, to further on that point, an investigative news organization that has ranked Michigan 50th in the nation in terms of transparency and accountability, said the issues surrounding the regulation of medical marijuana industry should make Michigan and other states strive for more transparency. So, two issues going on here. One is the medical marijuana industry, obviously being taken over here by companies and lobbyists and so on. The other issue here is our government's lack of transparency here at the state level. I know that we are very concerned and constantly peppered with transparency, government, so on a national level, but have you thought about it here on a state level? that obviously needs to be addressed if we're getting ranked 50 by, like this, the Center for Public Integrity. Says here, the issues here highlight a broader reality that state legislatures are not paragons of disclosure and protections against conflicts of interest. Said Gordon Whitkin, who is the executive editor at the center. There's lots of money in marijuana, and as legalization continues to proliferate, we're going to see more cash and more questionable behavior. Man, I don't know how much more I want to get into this article here. It's kind of enraging, isn't it? Let's cut down to the bottom here. It says, now Lansing awaits Snyder's appointment of the 5-member board to oversee medical marijuana licensing. 3 of the appointments are Snyder's, with 1 each recommended by Senate Majority Leader Arlen Meekoff, who has submitted Johnson's name, and House Speaker Tom Leonard, who declined to reveal his nominees. Another 17-member advisory panel will help develop the rules and regulations surrounding medical marijuana. Says here, much of the grunt work in drafting bills is done by key legislative staffers, and no staffers were more integral to the process than the chief of staffs to the 2 judiciary committees that worked on the legislation. Brian Pierce, who is chief of staff to House Judiciary Chairman Representative Clint Klesto, and Sandra McCormick, who is chief of staff to Senate Judiciary Chairman Rick Jones, both now have better paying jobs as lobbyists for the medical marijuana industry. Pierce left the legislature in 2015, less than 2 months after he created the medical marijuana bills and after they cleared the House of Representatives, and registered as a lobbyist in December with only 1 client, the Michigan Responsibility Council, a medical marijuana trade association representing businesses who want to get involved as growers. McCormick, who was chief of staff to Jones, became executive director in January of the Michigan Cannabis Development Association, which is funded by businesses that want to get into medical marijuana licensing once the state starts awarding them in December. The 2 staffers said they see nothing wrong with the move to lobbying, and that is what typically happens in Lansing, especially in the era of term limits, when staffers are forced to move when their bosses have to leave office. So blame it on the system, whatever. These guys are basically crafting laws, helping get them passed through, and then turning right back around and becoming lobbyists, or the other way around. Being lobbyists first, being effective, and then being elected into office. It just makes me sick. This is how it's working. Says, these staffers, former bosses, said they have no problem losing their employees to businesses that are directly impacted through legislation they have sponsored. So the legislatures certainly don't see anything wrong with it. Says, I can't count how many policy advisors have left the legislature to a policy area that they really like. This is just crazy. Says, Jones said McCormick is the 3rd chief of staff he has lost to lobbying. So it seems that these chief of staffs, the staffers of our legislators, are hot picks for the next lobbying office because they've got the in, they know who to go to, they know what's going on. So they make for an effective lobbyist. They know who supports what, where to go, and how to get things done. So I don't want to get into this article anymore. It's rather lengthy. I just recommend you check it out for yourself. It's on the Detroit Free Press. Again, it's titled Medical Pot Laws Ignite Lansing Feeding Frenzy. I think it's very telling. It's very telling of what is happening with our laws. It is very telling of what happened with our laws. I know a lot of patients and caregivers sitting around wondering, what did we do here? What were these passed for? Who was asking for these? Because when they read how it's going to be rolled out, it's not including them. It doesn't help clarify things. There's no, getting out of the gray area, if you will. In fact, it creates more gray areas. And I thought that was why they were trying to pass new legislation. But it appears they were clearly passing new legislation back in December for the almighty dollar. And I don't think that comes as a surprise to anyone. So check this article out if you've got the time. Detroit Free Press, Medical Pot Laws Ignite Lansing Feeding Frenzy. It's good to know the ins and outs of your local government, how things work. And again, some of the issues that we're touching on here, especially with this particular story, have a lot more to do with your government than it does with just medical marijuana. Because this type of thing is happening across the board in all categories. And I think the question needs to be put out there, is that how you want your government to be ran? Because that's how it is ran. So, all right, those are the stories I had to share with you today. I hope you enjoyed them. I hope you're up to par on everything. I hope you're growing good weed, and I hope you're feeling good from it. All right, that's the important thing. Make sure you remember to mark your calendar for the 420 party. It's going to be a lot of fun. Look forward to seeing you guys there. And definitely want to say thank you to all our club members for showing up every day and making it happen. You guys are awesome. You are examples of freedom. I love it, man. You really are. You put yourself out there every day. You make it happen. God bless you. You know what I'm saying? Keep doing it. All right? Because at the end of the day, it's only us who care about us. It's not them. All right? Guys, thanks for joining me this week. Catch you next week on the Genesee County Compassion Club show. You guys have a great week. See ya.